The Louisiana sun was not just shining. It was beating down on the asphalt with a kind of heavy, angry heat. It was the kind of afternoon where the air shimmers above the road, making the horizon look wavy and unreal. Inside the sedan, the air conditioning was doing its best, but it was losing the battle. Maya wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead and adjusted her grip on the steering wheel. She had been driving for 6 hours straight, and her back was starting to protest. She was on her way to handle some family business. It was the kind of trip nobody wants to make. Her mother had passed away 2 weeks ago, leaving behind a house full of memories and paperwork that needed sorting. Maya had taken a few days off from work to make the drive. She usually flew everywhere, but driving felt necessary this time. She needed the hours on the road to just think, to process the grief without having to put on a brave face for colleagues. The radio was playing a low, static-filled country station. It was the only thing she could pick up out here in the middle of nowhere. Tall pine trees lined both sides of the highway, creating a green wall that blocked out the view of anything else. There were no billboards, no gas stations, just miles of empty road. Maya checked her speed. She was doing exactly 65, right on the limit. She was a careful driver by nature. It was part of who she was. She liked rules. She liked order. It was why she was good at her job. Even though she wasn't on the clock today, in her rearview mirror, a flash of color caught her eye. It was a black and white patrol car, distinct against the dusty green of the trees. It wasn't moving fast, but it was steadily gaining on her. Maya didn't feel nervous. She hadn't done anything wrong. She just checked her mirrors and stayed in her lane. The car pulled up close behind her, riding her bumper, which was a little annoying. Most people would have sped up to get out of the way, but Maya knew better. You don't speed up when a cop is behind you. You maintain your course. Then came the lights. Blue and red strobes lit up the inside of her car, reflecting off the windshield. The siren gave a short bark, just a quick whoop to let her know she was the one. Maya let out a long sigh, shaking her head slightly. It was the last thing she needed today. She signaled, though there was no one else around, and guided her car onto the gravel shoulder. The tires crunched loudly against the stones as she came to a stop. She put the car in park and left her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. She watched the mirror. The officer stayed in his car for a minute, probably running her plates. She knew exactly what he was seeing. A clean record. A registered vehicle. Insurance up to date. She waited patiently, watching the dust swirl outside her window. Finally, the door of the patrol car opened, and a man stepped out. He was wearing the dark uniform of the local sheriff's department. He had his hat pulled low, and he moved with a deliberate, heavy pace. He wasn't walking. He was stomping. He rested his hand on his holster as he approached, a move that seemed theatrical rather than necessary. It was a power move. He came up to her window, staying slightly behind the pillar of the car so she couldn't get a full look at him. Driver's license and registration, he said. His voice was rough, like he had been shouting or smoking cigarettes all day. Is there a problem, officer? Maya asked. Her voice was calm, polite. She kept her hands visible as she reached for her purse on the passenger seat. I said license and registration, he repeated. Ignoring her question, Maya pulled out her wallet and handed him her license. Then she opened the glove box to grab the registration. The officer watched her every move like a hawk. Most cops were professional, just doing a boring job. This guy felt different. He seemed to be vibrating with a specific kind of energy-anxious energy. He snatched the papers from her hand and walked back to his cruiser without another word. Maya sat in the silence, listening to the engine tick as it cooled down. She looked at her watch. She was losing daylight. She just wanted a warning or a ticket so she could get back on the road. She wasn't worried about the ticket. She could afford it. It was just the delay. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The officer was still in his car. Maya looked in the mirror again. He wasn't typing on a computer. He was on his phone. He had the radio mic in one hand and was talking, his head bobbing animatedly. He seemed agitated. Maya's instincts, honed by years of training, began to prickle at the back of her neck. A standard traffic stop took 5 minutes. tops. This was dragging on. Suddenly, a second cruiser appeared, coming from the opposite direction. It did a U-turn in the middle of the highway and pulled up in front of her car, boxing her in. Maya's posture changed. She straightened her spine. The casual slump of a tired driver vanished. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't about a ticket anymore. You don't call backup for a speeding violation on a lonely highway unless you are expecting trouble. Or unless you are planning to make some. The driver of the second car got out. He was younger, looking fresh out of the academy. He walked over to the first officer and they stood between their cars, talking and looking back at Maya. The first officer, the one with the rough voice, pointed at her car trunk. He was gesturing wildly. The younger officer looked nervous, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. But he didn't tell the older man to stop. Maya took a slow, deep breath to center herself. She assessed the situation. She was a black woman alone in a rural county, miles from anything, with two male officers who were acting strangely. She knew the statistics. She knew the stories. But she also knew her own reality. She wasn't just a civilian. She was federal law enforcement. But today, in this car, in these casual clothes, she was just a woman to them. The older officer finished his conversation and marched back to her window. This time, he didn't stand back. He leaned right into her personal space, his face inches from hers. The smell of stale coffee and strong mint gum wafted off him.
Oh.
"Step out of the car, ma'am," he commanded. It wasn't a request. "Officer," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "Am I being detained? If not, I really need to be on my way." "You are definitely being detained," he sneered. A small, ugly smile curled his lip. "I smell something suspicious in there. And my partner here agrees. Step out now." Maya felt a surge of anger, but she pushed it down deep. Panic was the enemy. Fear was the enemy. She needed to be smart. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt. "You do know you haven't told me why I was stopped?" she asked, opening the door. "I'll tell you why you were stopped," the officer said, stepping back so she could get out, his hand hovering near his gun again. "You were swerving, and you look nervous." "Real nervous?" Maya stepped onto the gravel. The heat of the ground radiated up through her sneakers. She smoothed her shirt and turned to face him. She wasn't nervous, not in the way he meant. She was calculating. She was scanning. "Face the car and put your hands on the hood," he barked. The younger officer walked over then, standing by the rear bumper, watching silently. The sun was starting to set, casting long orange shadows across the road. It made the scene feel surreal, like a movie set with bad lighting. "Am I free to go?" Maya asked again, just to make the record clear. "You ain't going nowhere, lady," the older officer said. He walked to the back of her car and pulled out a pair of latex gloves with a sharp snap. "Not until we find out what you're hiding in there." Maya watched him pull on the gloves. She saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't the look of a cop looking for justice. It was the look of a hunter who had cornered a fox and was deciding whether to play with it or kill it. He had no idea who he was cornering. He had no idea that the woman in the jeans and t-shirt was the one person he shouldn't have messed with, but she couldn't tell him that yet. Not here. Not on a lonely road in the darkening evening. She had to play the part he had written for her, at least until she could figure out the angle. So, she placed her hands on the warm hood of her car, bowed her head slightly, and waited for the game to begin. The gravel crunched under Maya's feet as she shifted her weight, standing alone against the side of her car. The metal of the hood was warm, almost burning through the fabric of her shirt, but she kept her hands planted firmly right where the officer had told her to. The air was thick with humidity and the sound of cicadas buzzing loudly in the trees, a sharp contrast to the silence coming from the two men behind her. She could hear them whispering. It wasn't a professional conversation about procedure. It was low and conspiratorial. The older officer was doing most of the talking. His voice a raspy murmur that she couldn't quite make out, but the tone was clear. He was instructing the younger one. The rookie, whose name tag she couldn't read from this angle, wasn't saying much. He was just agreeing, letting his superior lead the dance. Maya kept her breathing slow and rhythmic. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This wasn't her first time in a high-stress situation, but this was different. In her job, she was the one with the badge and the authority. She was the one knocking on doors. Here the script was flipped. She was vulnerable. She knew exactly how dangerous this position was. If she made a wrong move, reached for her ID too fast, or even looked at them the wrong way, this could escalate from a traffic stop to a tragedy in a heartbeat.
Ow.
Slowly, the older officer barked. Maya turned to face them. The sun was dipping lower now, casting long shadows across the highway that made the trees look like they were closing in. The older officer had taken off his sunglasses. His eyes were small and beady, darting around the scene, not at her, but at the road, checking for other cars. He looked nervous, sweating through his uniform shirt even though the day was cooling down. "You seem real jittery for someone with nothing to hide," he said, stepping closer. He was trying to invade her personal space again, a tactic to make people back down or get scared. "Why are you shaking? You on something?" Maya looked him dead in the eye. She wasn't shaking because she was afraid. She was shaking because of the sheer injustice of it, the adrenaline pumping through her veins, but she knew he would interpret it as guilt. "I'm not shaking," Maya said, her voice steady and clear. "And I'm not on anything. I'm tired, officer. I've been driving for 6 hours. I just want to get to my family's house." He scoffed, a dry, ugly sound. "Family's house. Sure." He turned to the younger cop. "Did you get a look at her eyes when she opened the door? Red, glassy, definitely on something." The younger cop looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Maya, then away quickly. I don't know, sir. She looks okay to me. Did I ask for your opinion?" The older officer snapped, whipping his head around. "I asked if you saw it. You want to be a cop or not? You have to see the signs." We turned back to Maya, a smug grin returning to his face. "My partner here has a nose for this stuff. We think you're under the influence. And since you're under the influence, that gives us cause." "Cause for what?" Maya asked. She knew the law better than he did, but she played the part of the confused civilian. "Cause to search this vehicle," he said. He said it slowly, savoring the words like they were candy. He walked past her toward the trunk. "You don't mind if we take a look, do you? Since you have nothing to hide?" "I do mind," Maya said firmly. "I do not consent to a search of my vehicle." The officer stopped walking. He froze, his back to her for a second, then turned slowly. The smile was gone. Her refusal to submit didn't make him back off. It just annoyed him. In his world, people didn't quote laws to him. They obeyed. "I don't need your consent, lady," he spat. "We have probable cause. My partner smelled it when you opened the door. Didn't you, son?" The younger officer stiffened. He looked at Maya, who was standing tall with her shoulders back, looking calm and intelligent. He looked at the older officer, who was sweating and aggressive. The air was heavy with the lie. The rookie hesitated for just a heartbeat too long. Yeah, I smell it. Marijuana," he mumbled. It was a weak performance, but it was enough for them. "See." The older officer clapped his hands together once. "Probable cause? Step back." Maya took a step back onto the grass. Her mind was racing now. She knew what was going to happen. The car was clean. She was FBI, for heaven's sake. She wasn't stupid enough to transport anything illegal. But she also knew how these finds happened. She had seen it in case files. If they wanted to find something, they would find it. Or they would make it. The older officer went to the back of the car and unlocked the trunk using the button on the door panel. The lid popped open with a heavy click. He stared inside. It was mostly empty. Just a small overnight bag, a jacket, and a box of paperwork from her mother's house. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing suspicious. He frowned. He rummaged through the box of papers, tossing them onto the dirty roadside. He unzipped the overnight bag, shaking out the contents. A toothbrush, a change of clothes, a book, nothing. His frustration was growing visible. He kicked the tire of the car, leaving a black scuff mark on the rubber. "Check the glove box," he yelled at the rookie. "Check under the seats." The younger cop went to work. He used his flashlight to peer under the front seats. He checked the floor mats. He checked the side pockets in the doors. He was thorough, but at least he wasn't tearing things apart like the older officer. He looked frustrated too, but in a different way. He looked like he wanted to leave. They spent 20 minutes tearing the car apart. They checked the hubcaps. They looked inside the air filter. They even unscrewed the panels inside the trunk. Maya stood by the side of the road, her arms crossed over her chest, watching her personal belongings being thrown onto the dusty shoulder. It was humiliating. It was an invasion of her privacy. But the worst part was the waiting for the inevitable. They hadn't found anything. And Maya knew that the angrier the older cop got, the more desperate he would become. He couldn't just apologize and let her go. That would mean admitting he was wrong. That would mean he wasted his own time. He needed a win here. He needed something to justify the stop. Finally, the older officer slammed the trunk shut so hard the whole car rocked. He walked over to Maya, breathing hard. He took off his hat and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. He looked defeated, but his eyes were still searching, looking for a way out of this corner he had painted himself into. "You got a smart mouth, lady," he said. "And you're lucky. We didn't find anything. But you're still not cleared. Not by a long shot. I'd like to leave now," Maya said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous without him even realizing it. "Unless you are arresting me." The officer stared at her. He hated that she wasn't crying. He hated that she wasn't begging. He hated that she seemed to be looking right through his badge, right through the uniform, judging the man underneath. It made him feel small. "I'm not arresting you," he said, though he didn't sound happy about it. "But you can't drive that car yet. Not until the K9 unit gets here." Maya's stomach tightened. "The K9 unit? You said you smelled drugs. You said you had probable cause? Now you need a dog?" "It's backup," he snapped. "To make sure we didn't miss anything. We gotta be thorough, you understand? Thorough." He walked back to his patrol car, leaving Maya standing in the dusk. He reached into his window and grabbed his radio mic. He didn't call for a dog, though. He pressed the button and held it down for a long time. Maya watched him. He wasn't talking to dispatch. He was talking to himself, or perhaps just pretending. Then he looked over at the younger cop. "Hey!" he shouted. "Come here!" The rookie jogged over. They huddled by the driver's door, whispering again. The older officer reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He showed it to the rookie, shielding it with his body so Maya couldn't see. The rookie's eyes went wide. He shook his head quickly, looking terrified. "Relax," the older cop hissed. "She's just some city girl. Nobody's gonna believe her over us. Not here. Just keep your mouth shut and watch the road." Maya couldn't hear the words, but she saw the body language. The shift from frustration to intent. The older cop had a plan B. He wasn't going to let a lack of evidence stop him. He was going to manufacture it. He patted the pocket on his vest, the one he had taken the folded paper from, and walked back toward her car. The sun had finally set. The only light came from the headlights of the patrol cars and the blinking red and blue strobes that made the night look like a disco. Maya stood her ground. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to cry. She was going to let him dig his own grave. She watched him walk around to the passenger side of her car, checking to see if she was watching. She pretended to look at her phone, but her eyes were locked on his reflection in the car window. This was it, the moment of truth. She knew what he was about to do. And she knew that catching him was going to be the hardest thing she had ever done. The darkness had fully settled over the highway, wrapping the scene in a heavy blanket of black. The only light came from the flashing patrol bars, painting the trees in rhythmic bursts of red and blue. It felt like a strobe light at a nightmare party, disorienting and cold. Maya stood perfectly still by the side of the road, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She was forcing her muscles to relax, to stay loose. Even though every instinct was screaming at her to fight back, the older officer, whose name tag she now knew, Red Deputy Rogan, walked back toward her car. He didn't look at her. He moved with a strange, jerky energy, like a kid who knows he's about to break a window and is trying to act casual before he throws the stone. He went to the passenger side door first, opening it and leaning in. He wasn't searching anymore. He was positioning himself. Maya watched him in the reflection of the side mirror. She saw him glance over his shoulder at her. She pretended to be looking at the gravel on the ground, defeated and bored, but she was tracking his every move. This was the critical moment. If she stopped him now, if she yelled stop or lunged forward, she might survive the night, but she would lose the case. She needed him to commit. She needed him to hang himself with his own rope. Rogan straightened up and moved to the back of the car. He popped the trunk again. It groaned open. He stood there for a moment, silhouetted by the moonlight. He bent down, blocking the view with his body. He was crouched there for maybe 3 seconds. No more. It was a small movement, a quick transfer of weight. When he stood up, his hands were empty, but his shoulders dropped an inch. The tension that had been holding him up released. He had done it. He turned around slowly, holding something up in his gloved hand. It was a small plastic baggie. "I knew it," Rogan shouted. The triumph in his voice was sickening. "I knew you were holding." The younger officer, who had been leaning nervously against his patrol car, stood up straight. His eyes went to the bag, then to Maya, then back to Rogan. He looked confused. He knew they had torn that car apart. He knew they had looked under the spare tire, inside the lining, everywhere. That bag wasn't there 3 minutes ago. "Where did you find that, sir?" the rookie asked, his voice cracking slightly. Rogan shot him a look that could freeze water. "Under the spare tire, kid. It was taped up. You missed it. You were looking too fast. Good thing I double-checked." Maya felt a surge of anger so hot it almost made her gasp. The lie was so bold, so disrespectful. He was gaslighting his own partner right in front of her face. But she didn't say a word. She just watched. She was memorizing everything. The angle of his arm. The way he held the bag. The slight tremble in his hand. Rajan marched over to her, waving the bag like a trophy. "You're under arrest, sweetheart. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Spun her around and grabbed her wrists. The metal of the handcuffs was cold and hard. He ratcheted them tight to tight. The metal bit into Maya's skin, sending a sharp jolt of pain up her arms. She winced, closing her eyes for a split second. She didn't complain. She knew he wanted her to scream at him. He wanted her to get aggressive so he could use more force. He wanted to play the victim. "Is that necessary?" the rookie asked, taking a step forward. "Her wrists are kind of small. Maybe you could loosen back off." Rogan yelled, shoving the younger man back with his shoulder. "Don't tell me how to do my job. She's a felon. She's dangerous." "You saw the drugs." The rookie backed down, his face red with shame. He looked at Maya, an apology in his eyes, but he didn't speak. He was trapped in the blue wall of silence. Just as she was trapped in the handcuffs, Rogan grabbed Maya by the arm and shoved her toward the back seat of his patrol car. "Get in." Maya stumbled slightly, the gravel shifting under her feet, but she kept her balance. She didn't struggle. She sat down on the hard plastic seat, the smell of stale cigarettes and old sweat assaulting her nose. Rogan slammed the door shut. The sound was deafening. It was the final click of a trap closing. Inside the car, it was claustrophobic. There was a metal cage separating the front from the back. It was impossible to get comfortable with her hands cuffed behind her back. Every bump in the road sent a jolt of pain through her shoulders. Maya leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't thinking about the pain. She was accessing the mental file she had been building since the moment she saw the blue lights. She was an FBI agent. She knew exactly how this system worked. She knew exactly how to break it. She remembered the feeling of Rojan's hands when he first approached the window. The nervous energy. The sweating. He wasn't a dirty cop who did this every day. He was an amateur. He was desperate. Maybe he owed money. Maybe he had a gambling problem. It didn't matter why. What mattered was that he had made mistakes. He had touched his face. He had touched his pocket. He had fumbled with the search, and then there was the car. A slow smile spread across Maya's face in the dark. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a shark smile. Rogan had forgotten the first rule of hunting a predator: always check if the prey has teeth. When Rogan had pulled her over, he had been focused on her face, her clothes, her attitude. He saw a tired black woman in a sedan. He didn't see the antenna carefully embedded in the rear windshield, hidden behind the tint. He didn't see the small, nondescript black box tucked under the driver's seat, hardwired directly into the car's battery. Most people assumed FBI agents only used tracking devices on bad guys. But in her line of work, threats came from everywhere. It was standard protocol for her vehicle to be equipped with active audio and video surveillance. It wasn't just a GPS tracker. It was a rolling witness stand. It had been recording the second he turned on his lights. It had recorded his illegal search. It had recorded the whisper. And it had recorded him planting that bag. She just had to make sure that footage survived the night. Outside, heard Rogan and the rookie talking. The trunk of her car slammed shut. Then the engine of her car started up. They were towing it? No. Rajan was driving it. "I'll take her car to the impound," Rajan shouted. "You follow me in yours. We gotta book her and get this paperwork done before shift change." "'Kay, Sheriff," the rookie said. Rojan got into the driver's seat of her car. He adjusted the mirrors and checked his reflection. He looked pleased with himself. He turned on the radio, humming along to a country song, completely unaware that he was sitting in a booth that was broadcasting, his every breath to a server hundreds of miles away. The drive to the station was bumpy. Maya kept her breathing steady. She watched the streetlights flash through the wire mesh of the cage. She thought about her mother. She thought about how much her mom hated bullies. "They always trip themselves up eventually, Maya," her mother used to say. "You just have to be patient enough to watch." They arrived at the sheriff's office. It was a low, brick building on the edge of town. It looked dark and unwelcoming. Rogan pulled her car around the back, near a fenced-in lot filled with other impounded vehicles. He parked it and got out, walking over to the patrol car to open her door. "Come on," he grunted. "Time to get comfy." He hauled her out of the car. Her wrists were throbbing now, the skin raw. She walked through the back door of the station. It smelled like floor wax and old coffee. The hallway was empty. They took her to a small interrogation room. It had gray walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, and a two-way mirror. Rogan uncuffed her left hand and cuffed it to the metal ring on the table, then uncuffed her right hand and cuffed it to the table. She was chained to the spot. "Can I get some water?" Maya asked. Her throat was dry from the heat and the stress. Rogan laughed. "Water? You want room service?" "You'll get water when I decide you get water." He leaned over the table, getting in her face. The smell of his breath was foul. "Look at you. You thought you were so smooth, thought you could talk your way out of it? But you messed with the wrong deputy today. Nobody drives through my county with that much dope and gets away with it." He was enjoying this. He was savoring the power trip. "I want a lawyer," Maya said softly. Rajan laughed again, loud and echoing. "A lawyer? Honey, you're in deep trouble. By the time a lawyer gets here, we'll have the lab results. You're going away for a long time. Possession with intent to distribute. You're going to prison, girlie." He stood up and walked to the door. "I'm going to go get some coffee. Maybe type up the report. You sit here and think about what you did." He turned off the light as he left, plunging the room into darkness, except for a single dim bulb in the hallway outside. The door clicked shut. Maya was alone. She sat in the dark, chained to the table. But she wasn't afraid anymore. The fear had burned away, replaced by a cold, hard focus. She looked at the two-way mirror. She knew Rogan was probably on the other side, watching her, expecting to see a broken woman crying in the dark. She gave him exactly what he wanted. She slumped over, putting her head on her arms on the table. She let her body shake. It looked like sobbing, but under the cover of her arms, Maya wasn't crying. She was checking her watch. It had been 2 hours since she missed her check-in. Protocol dictated that if an agent is out of contact for more than 90 minutes without explanation, the flag goes up. The car's locator beacon had been pinging her coordinates the entire drive. The audio upload was complete. They were coming. She just had to survive the interrogation session that was about to begin. She had to let him dig the hole just a little bit deeper. She had to let him confess. She lifted her head slightly, looking at the dark glass of the mirror. She whispered one word, so quietly that maybe only the sensitive microphone in her own collar could pick it up. Or maybe just to the universe. Checkmate. Asterisk Maya sat in the dim light of the interrogation room, her arms heavy on the metal table. The room was freezing, a stark contrast to the humid heat outside. They always kept these rooms cold, she knew. It was a tactic to make the suspect uncomfortable, to make them want to shiver and fold their arms around themselves for warmth, making them look weak and defensive. But Maya didn't shiver. She kept her back straight, her breathing even. She watched the door handle. It was the only thing moving in the room. Finally, the handle turned. The door swung open, and Deputy Rojan walked in. He wasn't carrying coffee anymore. He had a manila folder under his arm and a plastic cup of water in his hand. He looked confident, like a man who had already won the game. He set the cup down on the table in front of her, pushing it with his finger so it slid across the metal surface. "Fresh water," he said, his voice dripping with fake kindness. "Thought you might be thirsty." Maya looked at the water, then up at him. She didn't move to touch it. "I asked for a lawyer 20 minutes ago." Regine pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. The legs screeched against the linoleum floor. He leaned back, crossing his arms, making his badge glint under the light. "Lawyers take time, honey, especially on a Friday night. But we don't need a lawyer right now. We can solve this problem right here, right now. Between the two of us." He opened the folder. Inside were a few grainy photos, her car, the side of the road, and a close-up of the baggie he had planted. It was all very theatrical. "We've got you dead to rights," Rojan said, tapping the photo. "That's a lot of narcotics. Possession with intent to distribute. That's a serious felony. You're looking at 10, maybe 15 years in a state penitentiary. That's a long time to be away from your family." He paused, watching her face, looking for cracks. Maya kept her expression neutral. She didn't blink. But Rogan continued, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm a reasonable man. I know people make mistakes. I know maybe you got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Maybe you were just transporting it for someone else to pay off a debt. It happens." Maya stared at him. She knew exactly where this was going. It was the oldest play in the book. The shakedown? He wasn't interested in the truth. He was interested in profit. "I didn't transport anything," Maya said, her voice flat. "That bag was not in my car when you pulled me over." Rogan's eyes hardened for a split second, a flash of anger that he quickly masked with a chuckle. "Oh, come on. Don't insult my intelligence. My partner saw it. It was under the spare tire. You think a judge is going to believe you over to veteran police officers?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, invading her space again. He smelled like stale tobacco and adrenaline. "Look, I can make this go away. I can write this up as a warning, a misunderstanding, but it's going to cost you." He held up his hand, rubbing his thumb against his fingers, the international sign for money. "I have $5,000 in cash in my wallet," Maya lied smoothly, "and a watch worth about $3,000. Take it. Let me go." She was testing him. A real cop wouldn't take the bribe. A corrupt cop would hesitate to take cash in the police station where there were cameras. Rojan laughed, shaking his head. "I don't want your cash." "What do I look like? A thief?" "I'm talking about a fine. A civil asset forfeiture. You pay the fine, the charges disappear. It's strictly administrative." "How much?" Maya asked, playing the role of the scared civilian willing to pay to make the nightmare end. Rogan smiled. He had her now. Or so he thought. $10,000. Wire transfer. Tonight. Maya acted shocked. "I don't have that kind of access on a Friday night. The banks are closed." "It's not for someone with your kind of connections," Rojan said, tapping the folder again. "We ran your background. You work for the government, Maya. Not just any job. High enough clearance that you make good money. I'm sure you have resources. Maya's heart skipped a beat. He had run her background. He knew she was federal. But the look in his eyes told her he didn't understand exactly what she did. He saw a paycheck, not a badge. He thought she was a paper pusher, maybe a clerk or an analyst. He didn't see the danger he was in. I can't get that kind of money, Maya said, letting her voice tremble just enough. Please, there has to be another way. Ragun stood up, the chair scraping loudly again. He was losing patience. The game wasn't going as fast as he wanted. There is no other way. You call someone. You get the money. Or you sit in a holding cell until Monday, and then I transfer you to the county jail. And trust me, the girls in county, they don't like drug dealers. Especially pretty ones like you. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. You have 1 hour. Then I book you. Turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. As soon as the lock clicked, Maya's trembling stopped instantly. She wasn't scared of Rogan. She was scared for him. He had just tried to extort a federal agent. He had just confessed to a felony on a recording system he didn't know existed. She looked up at the corner of the room. A small, unblinking camera lens stared back at her. She knew Rogan thought the camera was off, or that he could edit the footage later. He was arrogant. Arrogance was a blindfold. Maya closed her eyes. She needed to buy time. She needed to make sure the cavalry didn't just burst in with guns blazing. If they came in now, Rogan might claim he was just testing her, that it was a training exercise. She needed him to double down. She needed him to commit the act in front of witnesses. She looked at the mirror again. She knew the rookie was out there. She had seen him standing by the water cooler when Rogan dragged her past. She needed to get him in the room. Hey, Maya shouted, banging her cuffed hand on the metal table. I need to talk to someone. She waited. A minute passed. Then the door opened. It wasn't Rojan. It was the younger officer. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. Need to be quiet, he whispered, stepping inside but leaving the door open. I want to make a statement, Maya said, looking him right in the eye. I want to pay the fine. I have the money. I can access it. But I don't trust him. The rookie frowned. What? I don't trust Deputy Rojan, Maya said, dropping her voice. Look, I have the money. 10 grand. It's sitting in an account I can access from my phone. But if I transfer it, I need a witness. I need to know it's going to the department, not into his pocket. If you sign off on it, I'll do it right now. The young officer's eyes widened. He looked at the money she was talking about. Imaginary money, but he didn't know that. He looked at the door, then back at her. He was tempted. Rogan was treating him like a dog, keeping him in the dark. Here was a chance to be the hero, to bring in $10,000 for the department. If you bring that money in, the rookie said slowly, you're confessing to the crime. I'm confessing to nothing, Maya said sharply. I'm paying a fine to leave. That's what he said, right? Civil asset forfeiture? That's legal. It was a twisted logic, but she saw him grappling with it. He was tired. He was confused. And he didn't like Rogan any more than she did. I'll get him, the rookie stammered. No, Maya said. Don't get him. You take the statement. You be the witness. If you bring him in, he might take the credit. You do this, and you're the one who saved the department's budget. You're the one who caught the big fish. As the rookie stood there, his chest puffing out just a little bit. The ego was the key. It always was. Just let me use my phone, Maya said, nodding toward her purse on the table in the evidence room. It's right there. The rookie looked at the door again. The hallway was empty. He looked back at Maya. He wanted to be a good cop. He just didn't know how. Okay, he whispered. But if you're lying... I'm not lying, Maya said. He walked out and came back a moment later with her purse. He fished out her phone. He unlocked it. It wasn't password protected, a common mistake for people in a rush. But for Maya, it was a trap. He handed it to her. Maya held the phone. The screen lit up. It wasn't a standard home screen. It was a secure interface. She typed in a code. A map appeared. On the map, there were 3 red dots closing in on the police station from different directions. And there was a timer. The timer had 2 minutes left. She pretended to fumble with the banking app, pretending to struggle with the signal. "I can't get a signal in here," she lied. "The walls are too thick." The rookie stepped closer, trying to help. "Maybe by the window?" She stood up and walked to the small, barred window at the back of the room. The reception was actually perfect, but she needed to stall for just a little longer. "It's loading," she said, watching the seconds tick down on her internal clock. Just then, the door flew open. Rogan stormed in. He saw the rookie. He saw Maya by the window. And he saw the phone in her hand. "What are you doing?" Rogan roared, grabbing the phone from her hand and throwing it onto the table. "I told you no phones." "She was trying to pay," the rookie stammered, backing away. "She said she had the money." Rogan's face turned purple. He looked at Maya with pure hate. He realized he was losing control of the narrative. She was supposed to be broken. She was supposed to be begging. Instead, she was making deals with his rookie. "You think you're smart?" Rajan yelled, getting right in her face. "You think you can play us?" Suddenly, a loud siren began to wail outside. Not a police siren. It was a tactical alert siren. It was a low, booming sound that vibrated the walls of the station. It wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the road. Then came the cars. Not one or two, but the sound of multiple heavy engines. Tires screeching on asphalt, and the distinct piercing wail of federal sirens. Roge and froze. The color drained from his face. He looked at the window, then back at Maya. The rookie looked terrified. "Sheriff, what is that? Who is that?" Maya stood up straight. She didn't look like a scared drug dealer anymore. She looked like an agent. She smoothed her shirt. "Deputy Rogan," she said, her voice no longer trembling, ringing with authority. "I suggest you step away from the table." "What did you do?" Rogan whispered, his hand shaking as it hovered over his gun. Maya pointed a finger at him. "I told you. I'm federal, and I just activated a Priority 1 distress signal. You have exactly 30 seconds to unhandcuff me and lay your weapon on the ground before the tactical team breaches that door." Rogan stared at her, his eyes wide with the realization of what he had done. The predator suddenly realized he had just eaten the poison. The shouting in the hallway began. Heavy boots thundering on the floor. Federal agents. "Open the door." Hands in the air. The rookie immediately dropped to his knees, hands behind his head. He was smart enough to know when the game was over. Rogan just stood there, his jaw hanging open, looking at the woman he had tried to destroy. She didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like justice. The door handle rattled. Then, a loud boom as a battering ram hit the wood. Maya looked Rogan in the eye and smiled. "You should have taken the $5,000 when you had the chance." Asterisk, the sound of the battering ram hitting the metal door was like a thunderclap inside the small room. The whole frame shook, dust drifting down from the ceiling tiles. Deputy Rogan flinched, his hand jerking away from his gun holster, as if he had been burned. The realization of what was happening washed over him like a bucket of ice water. The color that had drained from his face moments ago didn't return. He just looked pale and ghostly. "Step away from the prisoner," a voice boomed through the thick steel door. "Hands where we can see them. Now." The rookie, who was already on his knees, pressed his forehead to the dirty linoleum floor, shaking visibly. He had made his choice. He wasn't going to die for Deputy Rojan's pension. Rojan looked at Maya, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat looking for an escape hole. There wasn't one. He took a stumbling step back, raising his hands slowly, his chest heaving with panic. Maya didn't move. She stood by the window, her posture rigid and tall. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calm focus. She watched Rojan crumble. It was a strange thing to see a man who had held so much power just an hour ago now reduced to a frightened child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Do as they say," Maya said quietly. "Don't make it worse." Before Rojan could answer, the door crashed open. It didn't just open. It flew off its hinges, slamming into the wall with a terrifying clang. The room was instantly filled with figures in tactical gear, heavily armored, holding assault rifles. Red laser sights dotted the walls and Rojan's chest, dancing like deadly fireflies. FBI. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now. 3 agents rushed in. They moved with a precision that was terrifying to watch. 2 of them grabbed Rogan, spinning him around and slamming him against the wall. They wrenched his arms behind his back and zip-tied his wrists in seconds. Rogan didn't fight back. He let out a low groan, a sound of utter defeat. The 3rd agent, a tall woman with a stern face, rushed to Maya. She didn't ask questions. She pulled a pair of cutters from her belt and sliced through the plastic ties on Maya's wrists. "Agent Sterling," the woman said, her voice full of relief. "Are you injured?" Maya rubbed her wrists, feeling the circulation rush back into her fingers. She looked at the agent. "I'm fine, Harris. Just bruised ego, and my car is scratched." Harris let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. "We'll get you a new one." "The director is on the line. He's been monitoring the situation since your tracker went hot." Rogan, his face pressed against the wall, turned his head slightly. His eyes widened in shock when he heard the title director. "Wait. Sterling," he croaked. "Director Sterling? The agent Sterling?" Harris looked over at him, her face hardening. "Shut your mouth. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." She grabbed Rogaine by the collar of his uniform and hauled him out of the room. 2 more agents entered to take custody of the rookie, who was crying quietly now, apologizing over and over again. The room emptied out, leaving just Maya and the chaos of paperwork and scattered photos on the table. Maya stood there for a long moment, looking at the empty chair where Rojan had sat. She took a deep breath, the first real breath she had taken since she saw the flashing lights on the highway. It was over. She walked out of the interrogation room and into the hallway. The station was in an uproar. Local deputies were standing against the walls, watching with their hands in plain sight, looking confused and scared. The FBI had taken over their building. It was a humbling experience for them, but necessary. You couldn't let the foxes guard the henhouse. Walking out the front door of the station felt like stepping into a different world. The air was cool and fresh. The sun was starting to peek over the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the parking lot. It was dawn. A new day. Her car was still parked in the back lot, dusty and with a scratch on the door where they had impounded it, but intact. A team of forensic agents was already swarming over it, wearing white jumpsuits and gloves. One of them was carefully lifting the spare tire out of the trunk with gloved hands. Maya walked over to the lead agent, a man named Davis, who she had worked with for years. "Find it?" she asked. Davis stood up, holding an evidence bag. Inside was the small plastic baggie of white powder Rogan had planted. He held it up to the morning light. "We did," Davis said, grimacing. "And we found the partial fingerprints on the plastic. They matched the set we took off Rogan 5 minutes ago. He didn't even wear gloves when he planted it. He was in such a hurry he slipped up, and the recording," Maya asked. Davis tapped the side of his head. "Every word, every nasty comment, the bribe offer, the confession. It's all uploaded to the secure server and backed up in 3 locations. The digital forensics team pulled the audio from your car's black box. It's crystal clear. He's done, Maya. He's going away for a long time." Maya nodded. It felt good. It felt right. But it also felt sad. It was sad that it had come to this. It was sad that a man sworn to protect people had tried to destroy a life just because he could. "Where is he now?" she asked. "In the back of a transport van," Davis said. "He's heading to the federal detention center. He won't be seeing the light of day for a while. The corruption charges alone are going to bury him. The civil rights violation for falsifying evidence, that's a federal crime." Maya looked around the quiet lot. The rookie was being led to another van. He looked broken. Maya walked over to him. The agent guarding him looked at Maya, then stepped aside. "Agent," the rookie asked, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to do it, I swear. I was scared of him." Maya looked at him. She saw the fear, but she also saw the truth. He had made a choice. He had stood by and watched an innocent woman get framed. He could have stopped it, but he didn't. You didn't want to do it, but you did it, Maya said gently. You took an oath to protect people, not to follow orders that are wrong. You need to remember that. You're going to have to answer for what you did tonight. But if you cooperate, maybe the judge will see that you weren't the mastermind. The rookie nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. Thank you for not letting them hurt me. I'm not the one you should thank, Maya said. Thank the law. It works even when people try to break it. She turned and walked back to her car. One of the agents handed her the keys. She opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. It smelled a bit like stale smoke still. A remnant of the ride over with Rogan. She rolled down the windows to let the air out. She rested her hands on the steering wheel. She thought about her mother. She thought about how her mom always told her to stand up for herself, to speak truth to power. She wished her mom was there to see this. But in a way, she was. Maya felt a sense of closure that she hadn't expected when she started this drive. She started the engine. It purred to life, smooth and steady. She put the car in gear and drove slowly out of the parking lot. She passed the news vans that were starting to arrive, reporters setting up their cameras. They didn't know the full story yet, but they would soon. As she merged onto the highway, the sun rose higher in the sky. It was a beautiful, bright morning. The road stretched out ahead of her, long and open. She wasn't just driving to settle in a state anymore. She was driving back to her life. But she knew this night would stay with her. It would be a story she told the new recruits. It would be a reminder that the badge doesn't make the man. The character does. And sometimes, the bad guys aren't hiding in dark alleys. Sometimes they are wearing a uniform and driving a patrol car. Maya turned up the radio. A soft, upbeat song was playing. She hummed along, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. She was safe. She was free. And justice, real justice, had finally been served. She drove on, leaving the shadows of the sheriff's station behind her, disappearing into the bright light of the new day.